Hello, me again. So today I was thinking of talking about time and frequency. The first experience or event I experienced time slowing down. Now I know that sometimes in times of extreme stress, accidents and things like that, people experience everything going slow. And I guess this is started off with something similar, and like everything was moving in slow motion. But my experience was I was in the garden with a friend of mine, an old friend of mine, and I was being annoying to one of my sisters. We had this sort of camp built up, and I was throwing small stones out on the top of the camp. So it went in. She was in there with a friend or whatever. I was just being irritating. As I was a young lad in my early teens. And anyway, I got to a point where she came out, was fed up with it. She picked up this tennis ball, pulled it back, and threw it straight at my face. And she was only standing like a few feet away. Now, as soon as she pulled it back and was going to throw it, it was like everything stopped. And my conscious experience, it was that everything had stopped. And I thought, oh, and it took me a moment to realise that what's going on. And then I realised that it hadn't stopped completely, but was moving at this sort of like really slow rate, like that. It was so slow, but my mind, my consciousness, was thinking at the same pace and speed as we are all here now. I was thinking like that. My consciousness was running at what appeared to me to be normal level, but the physical reality had slowed down to an almost stop. And I noticed, because I had time to see all the periphery of my vision and everything. I could see everything around me, and I thought, oh, she's throwing a ball at my face. Damn! I thought that's going to hit me. I thought, oh, maybe I could get my arm up to stop it. So I thought I'd try and move my arm up, but my arm didn't move any faster than anything else. It was still obeying the physical rules and laws of this plane of existence in which we find ourselves. So although my thinking was I was on a different plane of thinking, level of thinking, but physical reality was still the same. So anyway, I started to try to bring my arm up, and I thought, oh, and I could see it slowly, the ball slowly coming towards me, and my arm slowly coming up. And after what for me was a minute or two, I realised, I thought, no, the ball's gaining. There's no way my arm is going to reach in time in order for me to stop the ball from hitting me. So everything in hindsight is 2020, isn't it? So, I mean, I could have tried to move my head at the same time as move my arm. I never thought of that. All I thought was trying to get my arm up, because I was obviously a little bit of shock about what was going on. That's all I could think about at the time. So I started to move my arm. And then obviously I realised that I wasn't going to be there in time to stop the ball hitting my face. So I thought, what can I do? And I thought, maybe if I can snap out of this mode, slow-mo mode, the snapping out might jolt my arm into going a bit faster. This was my thinking. So I thought, well, I've nothing else to lose. So I managed to snap myself out of this slow-mo mode, and my arm went up like this, and bang, the ball hit me in the eye, of course. There was no way I was gonna. I was too late with my movements to stop the ball from hitting me. So you would have thought that I'd have been, upset or whatever, really angry. The ball hit me in the eye, but I wasn't. I was too absorbed in what just happened. The ball hit me in the eye. I didn't care. I felt it, but it didn't matter. It was a tennis ball. It wasn't really that hard, but I felt it. But I was like more interested in what just happened. And then she went off with her friend, and I was talking to my friend. I said, "Blimey!" I said, "Everything stopped. Everything went really slow." I said, "How was it for you?" I said, "What did anything seem different or anything?" And he said, "Well, I don't know about going slow," he said, "but I've never seen someone's arm move as fast as yours just did. So it gave me super fast reactions, although I took time thinking about it and then decided to move my arm. In the frame rate that everyone's living in the physical reality, it was super, super quick. So what was going on there? I saw a video of Rich West. I'll put a link of it beneath this video recently, and I think that's what made me think about these experiences I've had with time. And he was saying how he experienced being in a different plane of existence. I think he was. I might be corrected. He was in a different plane of existence, and he was in a higher frequency plane of existence where things are different. And in this plane of existence where he was, he said, you were able to move through physical walls because the wall is vibrating at this level, say, and then he was vibrating at this level. And so this is his explanation, actually. And then as it's moving faster, it's able to get in between the molecules or whatever of this slow vibrating physicalness, and you're able to fit through and perhaps go through the other side because you're vibrating at much higher rate than if you're moving at the same time. It won't go past each other. But because he was moving at this rate, and this is moving at this rate, it's like it could sort of just get in between. Something like that. So I quite like that explanation. That made me thought, oh, that's really interesting. And so what I believe happened with me was the same thing. I could never really get a grasp of why would I experience things at a different speed. I mean, time is an illusion. I think if you thinking about these things and having a lot of experiences, you might have realised that time is kind of an illusion anyway. Past, present, and future, as we talked about before, all being a whole. And we experience life and time as being linear, but of course it's not linear, it's just our experience of it. I was obviously vibrating at a higher level, and as I'm vibrating at a higher level, everything else seems to be going slower, as in the slow vibration of the physical things, and I was vibrating higher. So actually, as I'm vibrating higher, yes, I see things moving slower. So that's what I think happened. So I never really knew what the process was, but I think now, with that explanation, that I believe I was vibrating at a higher level, a higher frequency. And that's really interesting. So, because as a higher frequency being, you have to lower your frequency in order to exist in this level of plane of existence, in our third frequency level of being. And it's a lower vibration, and things are slower and less. And at the higher vibrational places and universes, as I've explained before, if you look back at the videos, are much wider and much bigger. There's much more information there. They're like a higher band broadband. Your bandwidth is much bigger. So that's what I think was happening there. I want to talk about the second experience I had with time in the same way, but it wasn't a physical. It wasn't something that was happening to me like an accident. What happened was I was doing an IQ test at Mensa. Actually, I remember doing an IQ test that was on I remember seeing an advert for Mensa on the back of when I was living with my parents. They used to get the papers, and they had the Sun of all things. On the back of the Sun was this little box from Mensa saying, do this test. If you can do this test, you might be eligible for Mensa. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I want to do that little test, and I felt that was quite easy. So if you think that was easy, then you can send away for a home test, and you put yourself under strict conditions. You time yourself for a certain amount of questions, and what you answer, then you have to stop and then move on or whatever. So I did that. I sent off for a home test, which they sent, and then I stuck to the time, so I was really intrigued. And then you send it off and they mark it. So I did the test, and I worked out that I thought I might get in, because I managed to work out what sort of percentage of questions I might need to get right in order to be in with a chance. And I thought I'd done enough, but I wasn't 100% sure, but I was pretty sure I'd done the right amount. Anyway, so I sent it off, and sure enough, they sent back a letter, because this was before emails and such, like talking the 80s. And they said, oh, well, your results are good. We'd like to invite you to a proper exam where it's vigilated, And so I thought, oh, yeah, why not? That's interesting. It was in London University, and I remember riding my motorbike then, and a Motor Guzzi, 850 Le Mans, which I wish I still had because it's worth a fortune now. And I rode it up to London to sit this test. So I sat the test. I did 2 tests. So I sat the test, and then I left, came back home, and they sent me a letter. It was like, it's all by letters then, saying, "Oh, you did really well. Your IQ is above, because your IQ needs to be above 98% of the rest of the world, because you need to be in the top 2% to be able to join Mensa." And they said your IQ is above 96% of the rest of the world, which is really good, but it's not quite high enough to join Mensa. But they said, we find that a lot of people aren't very good at exams and fail the first one, with stress and such like. And so we'd like to invite you to a second one for a second chance. As it turns out that, indeed, really in my case as well, that a lot of people with high intelligence are failed by the school system completely. The same with people with a slightly lower IQ, who find things difficult, are outside of the school system. Those also with a higher IQ are outside of the system. The school system is streamed. They've got this like average level, and you have to fit in this small band of ability or whatever. And then if you're outside of that, you're fucked. Basically, you fall out of the system. Now, teachers like to tell me I was stupid as at school. It's quite. So this was this was a win. This was a win for me. I am not stupid at all, in fact. But so anyway, so I found that also really interesting. That most of the Mensa people that have got high IQs haven't got degrees, PhDs, and all this sort of thing, because they've fallen foul of the system, of this rubbish education system that we're all under. The education system is rubbish for many different reasons. I think it's all a moral continuation of the restrictions on people, and just obey authority, repeat back what we say, don't think for yourself. And as long as you can regurgitate what they've told you, you can get far in the system. It's just such a rubbish, broken system. And it's all about obeying authority. You come to school this time, you go home at this time, you have lunch at this time, you do what we tell you, you repeat what we say. Now you go back out into work, and then the whole regimented conditioning. That's the word I was trying to think of. Conditioned by education, conditioned by society in that way. And then you go out to work, and you get up and you go to work, you have your lunch, you work in the afternoon, you go home, you have your dinner, you go to bed, you get up, you go to work. It's just this monotonous, relentless, monotonous tide of conditioned slavery, which starts at the education system. Anyway, that's enough about the education system and my opinion on it anyway, and my experience of it. But it was interesting to find out that a lot of people, maybe a much higher percentage of really high IQ people, didn't do well at school. And that's a very telling sign, isn't it? I don't know why that isn't. Well, we know why it isn't talked about a lot, because no one wants to admit that today. So anyway, I went for the second test. And the second test, they say it's less about, English or maths or stuff. And it's more symbols and patterns, and seeing the symbols and patterns in things, and seeing how they relate to each other and that sort of thing. So it's less education, if you like, also. So a slightly different test. Anyway, so I was doing this test. As I went for the second one, I thought, yeah, I'll go for that. Because I didn't think I did as well as I could have done in the first one. I was happy with the result, obviously, but I thought, it's good to have a second chance, and learning about all that information. So I went back for the second one. There was some problems on the paper that I saw. And what happened was, some of the problems, I looked at the problem, and all of a sudden, I saw the answers. I just knew what the answer was. I immediately knew the answer, and I immediately knew all the steps that led up to that answer. It was just like that. I could see all the steps to the answer and the answer, but I saw the answer and then thought for a millisecond and realised that I knew all the steps up to the answer. And so I answered some questions really quickly, and that's really how the tests work. They have tests that anyone can work out. Just depends how long it takes you to work out, how quick you are to work these things out and get them through in a matter of time. That's basically how they measure IQ, really. It's not, the whole measure of a person, so it doesn't mean anyone's any better than you or anything. It's just a speed of thought, a way of thinking quickly, as far as I can tell. People can say I'm wrong about that, but anyway, that's what I noticed. So anyway, so I saw the answer, and I saw all the steps leading to the answer, all in the same millisecond. I just knew it all, boom, 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 like this. Relating that back. Oh, and I might as well say that. And then I got into Mensa. My score wasn't, I was in the top 2%. I was just in, my score was just on the line of going in, sort of thing. It wasn't. There's what they call the 1%. There's a bunch of people in Mensa who are, thinking of themselves as the elite. I don't know that. I'm not dissing or anything, but there's a 1% because they're like in the top 1%. But I was in the 2%. Still, 2%. Your IQ is in the top 2% of the world. I mean, that's pretty impressive, really, isn't it? Certainly not stupid. Anyway, so to schools, education system. Yeah. So the point is, I mean, I'm not in Mensa anymore, by the way. You have to pay a yearly thing, and I thought, oh, what are they going to do with all these minds that are, got these high IQs? Are they going to put them to any use? Is like getting people together to think over problems or something that's useful for mankind or the world. I had this like illusion of must be something special to it, but actually, once you're in, all you get really, there's some local groups that might meet in a pub or something. It's just like any other sort of social group, really. You can meet up in the pub or around someone's house, and that was that. It was something and nothing. And also, there's what they call SIGs, special interest groups, within it, and it's just like you have your Star Trek fans, the people that are interested in motorbikes, maybe people are interested in sci-fi, whatever, gardening. They have lots of special interest groups, and you can join these special interest groups and chat with people on there and get their updates and stuff like that. That's how it was at the time. And I thought, well, I could join groups like that anywhere. I don't need to be in Mensa to join the groups. What's the point? So I actually didn't see a point in Mensa. I didn't see the point. Although I think they have started up some schools. There was a school in London, I think. They might start up a couple of places that were, this was actually useful, understanding that we'd fallen out of the schooling system because we didn't fit in the middle stream of, averageness. And they started up some schools where people who are below the average and people who are above the average could get quality teaching, quality education that were outside of the school system. Now that's a useful thing to do, and I think that is probably what they should be concentrating on most. They might be. I don't know what they've done since then, whether they've got more schools or whether it's what the score is with all that. I haven't kept up with that, but they're just special interest groups and that. I couldn't see the point in being in it, so I'm not in it anymore. I could always rejoin, but so that's all that. That's slightly aside. The point is, I'm trying to make is the speed of thought, the frequency and speed of thought. So I see the answer and I saw the steps to the answer all in the same time. It was like instantaneous. This was obviously me being in a higher frequency rate. It's the higher frequency rate that sees everything else get slow. Only on the Mensa test. So when I had the tennis ball instance, it was very physical, and I saw physically everything going slowly, although I was thinking in a different frame rate, in a different rate of frequency. But with the IQ test, I was still, everything physical was working normal time. It's just that the part of my consciousness that was working out on the test was working on that higher frequency. But I was in normal, but part of my consciousness was in the normal physical realm of frequency and how things move and how time is. But part of my mind, or part of my consciousness, I should say, is in that higher frequency. Now, I know that my higher self, my true self, my primary incarnation, is living in a higher frequency. And so that's probably that part of me that is him that is working that out. So it's all to do with frequency. So time and frequency are connected, interestingly, in that way. That's very interesting. And that's only I didn't really connect the tennis ball thing and the IQ thing, the test, for a long time. But now I see the connection. Now I understand it. So there's another incident. The third one is in meditation. So whilst I was in meditation, I went to another place. It doesn't really matter. I was in another small monastery somewhere in the UK. And it was when I was in White. I was a postulant and I was driving the abbot around the monastery, and we went to Devon, to this Devon Vihara. And I had this little kuti that was outside the building, which was really nice, and I was able to meditate in there. But there was all farms, fields around, and I could hear this there was this engine running, this diesel engine. It was going, could hear it running. I don't know what it's running for, electric fence maybe or something, I don't know. And I was meditating and I could just hear this engine. And rather than being annoyed by the sound, because you can get annoyed by things easily, if you really want the peace and quiet to meditate, but actually you should use them as a focus. So I used the engine as a focus of my meditation. Point of focus was getting really sharp, and the engine for me was slowing down until I could hear the space in between the strokes of the engine. So do 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 do, and then it stopped until I was right into, you could say, no time. But what I found was then when I came out, the engine had stopped. I have I'm not sure. I have a feeling that I may actually have physically affected the engine and stopped the engine by concentrating on it. It may just have stopped, of course. But the interesting thing was that on concentrating on it, I could hear the engine slow, 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 and it felt like I was stopping it. But I don't know if that is the case. Could be. So that was a third incident with time, and I think possibly as you're meditating, if you leave the body, etc., it's also a case of raising your vibration, even though you may not realize it. And that brings me on to a fourth incident of mine where I was in the monastery still. This was, I don't know whether it was before or after this event. I think I was after this event. I wasn't in white anymore. And I was in my room. This is probably more of an ET thing than a meditation thing, or maybe a connection. I was in my room and I just felt really uncomfortable. I just couldn't really explain why, but I felt comfortable. I couldn't really settle. I couldn't rest. And this went on, I think, from an evening, a late afternoon evening, into the next day. Into the next morning, I felt the same. And then all of a sudden, it stopped. What stopped? All of a sudden, I felt calm. And it's only when it stopped I realised what it was. It was that every cell of my body and all of my being was vibrating. It was really, really highly vibrating. Like this. I didn't notice what, I just felt uncomfortable. And then when it stopped, I felt relaxed. I felt a lot better. I think that it could be that all the amount of meditation that I was doing, work on myself and understanding and everything, that I was raising my vibration, and that was a result of raising my vibration, in that literally my body was vibrating me to a different state of being, or I was being affected by some ET presence. I don't know, but that was very interesting. Fifth one, maybe, my body vibrating till it stopped. And then the last one, more recent times, this is a kind of typical ET kind of abduction story, I suppose. I don't call them abductions. For me, it's more, I'm just meeting beings that I know that are related to me in some way, that we work together, etc. I don't really like the word abduction in my case. It's not really true. I've agreed to everything that I'm doing. I've agreed to come here. This is all my plan. So abduction doesn't really relate in my mind. Anyway, so I was in bed asleep, and then I was conscious, and I was out of my bed, and I was walking towards the window with the curtains closed in my room. I was aware that I was naked. I do sleep without anything. I don't wear pajamas or anything. I was aware that I was naked, and I walked to the window, and then all of a sudden I just went through the wall and the window, and I was outside, and I'm on the first floor. So it was about, 13 feet or something below to the ground, and I was outside the window, hovering over the ground. After I passed through the wall, then I suddenly felt myself being pulled upwards towards the sky, and I felt a bit nervous at first. I thought, "Oh, who's taking me?" And then I don't know. I just said to myself, "That's ridiculous. Just relax. It's all my friends and family or whatever, or colleagues. This is all as it's supposed to be." and I relaxed, and then I started shooting off faster and faster towards the clouds, and then that's it. There was blank. I don't remember anymore. And then the next thing I know, I'm in bed. Now, was that an astral travel, as you could say, and was that just my consciousness and not my body, or was my body? I felt that I was standing at the window, and that I went through it, and the wall and the window. So that, as we were talking earlier, this is what made me think of that when Rich was talking about his experience and his idea of the vibration and going through. So that was that the case, or I don't know if that was my physical body. I can't say, or whether it was whatever you want to call it, like an astral body or your other body. That's not the physical self, but your conscious. But I remember standing there, and I was aware that I was naked, and I was aware that I was going through the wall. So it may well have been a physical going through the wall, but I'm not 100% sure. That is my talk on time and frequency. So make of that what you will, but all those things together, I think, show that their time obviously is not as we really think it is. We don't really understand time fully. And also that time is related to what we think of as time is really frequency, maybe, and related to frequency. So that is just more interesting things that maybe some people can relate to or not. Feel free to comment below. I'll see you in the next vlog. Thank you.